Caleb had been hunting for days. He was used to the long hours, the isolation, the hunt itself, but this time, something felt off. The forest around him was dense, the trees taller and closer together than he remembered. The deer he was tracking was nowhere in sight, but Caleb pressed on, knowing that sometimes the hardest hunts were the most rewarding. The sun was setting when he finally spotted the house. It wasn't much, just an old cabin, its wooden walls weathered and gray, standing among the trees like it had been there for centuries. Caleb frowned. He hadn't seen this cabin before. He didn't recall a trail leading to it. Curiosity won over caution, and he approached the cabin. The door creaked as Caleb pushed it open. The air inside was thick with dust and rot. A stale smell of decay clung to everything, like the cabin had been abandoned for years. Yet there was something eerily familiar about the place. It was as though the walls themselves had been waiting for him. He stepped inside, cautiously. The floorboards groaned beneath his weight, and his boots kicked up old debris. The walls were covered in strange symbols, carvings that twisted and writhed in the dim light, as if the wood was alive. Some of the symbols resembled faces, eyes staring at him from every corner. Caleb's skin crawled. He tried to tell himself it was just the isolation getting to him. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. He turned toward the door, ready to leave, but then he saw it. A shadow, barely visible, in the small window above the cabin door. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light. But as he stared, the figure became clearer. Tall, thin, and completely still. For a moment, Caleb froze. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the figure. Then, to his horror, the figure raised a hand and slowly, deliberately, motioned for him to come closer. His breath caught in his throat. His instincts screamed at him to run, to get out of there before whatever it was could do anything. But his body didn't obey. Instead, he stepped forward toward the window. When Caleb reached the window, the figure was gone. But the moment his hand touched the glass, the door slammed shut behind him with a force that rattled the cabin. He turned quickly, heart pounding in his chest, but the door was locked. He couldn't get out. The air in the cabin grew colder, and Caleb could hear the sounds of the forest outside, rustling leaves, the distant cry of a bird. But it all seemed wrong. The forest wasn't as it had been. The trees outside were now twisted, their bark cracked and gnarled, their limbs reaching out like hands. He turned back toward the center of the cabin and froze. The shadows were moving, shifting, growing larger. There was something in the corners of the room, something he couldn't see, but he could feel it. It was watching him, waiting. As time passed, or maybe it was minutes, maybe hours, Caleb's mind began to unravel. The walls of the cabin pressed closer to him, and the shadows seemed to whisper his name. He stumbled toward the door, desperate to escape, but it was still locked. That's when he saw it. In the far corner of the room, behind a curtain of dust and cobwebs, the outline of something huge and shifting. It was the size of a man, but not quite. Its shape was wrong. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, like it was both solid and liquid at the same time. It stepped forward, and Caleb could feel the very air around him change. The temperature dropped, and his breath became visible in the freezing cold. "You're part of the hunt now," it whispered, its voice like the rustling of dead leaves. Suddenly, Caleb realized the truth. The hunt had never been about the deer. He had been the prey all along. The forest, the cabin, and the twisted figures. It had all been part of something much older, something that had been watching him from the moment he entered its domain. And now, it was his turn.
Deep in the heart of the Vermont wilderness, where the ancient trees formed a suffocating canopy and the mist clung to the earth like spectral shrouds, stood the abandoned Blackwood Sanatorium. Locals whispered its name with a mix of fear and reverence, calling it Echo Asylum, a place where the tortured souls of the insane still roamed its decaying halls. The legend spoke of horrific experiments conducted within its walls, procedures that shattered minds and left deep, invisible scars. They said the screams of the patients still echoed through the empty corridors, and their ghostly figures could be seen, flickering in the shadows, trapped in an eternal loop of torment. Our protagonist, Emily, a determined journalist with a reputation for debunking paranormal myths, heard these unsettling tales and decided to spend a night within the asylum's haunted confines, determined to expose them as mere folklore. Armed with her trusty camera, a digital voice recorder, and an unwavering skepticism, she ventured into the depths of Blackwood, unaware of the horrors that awaited her. As darkness enveloped the sanatorium, Emily stepped through the rusted gates, their hinges groaning like tortured souls. The air grew heavy, thick with the stench of decay and a palpable sense of dread. The wind, whistling through shattered windows, sounded like mournful cries. She began her exploration, meticulously documenting every creak, every shadow, searching for logical explanations for the unsettling atmosphere. In a dimly lit office, she discovered a weathered journal belonging to a former head physician. Its pages revealed a chilling narrative of unethical experiments, mind control techniques, and the systematic destruction of human sanity. The patients were subjected to sensory deprivation, hallucinogenic drugs, and psychological manipulation, their minds twisted and broken beyond repair. As Emily delved deeper into the journal, the sanatorium seemed to come alive. She heard whispers, too faint to decipher, drifting from empty rooms. Footsteps echoed from the upper floors, and fleeting shadows danced in her peripheral vision. The camera captured inexplicable flashes of light, dust motes swirling in unnatural patterns, and objects shifting positions as if moved by unseen hands. A primal fear gripped Emily, a cold dread that seeped into her bones, but she pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. She set up motion sensors, positioned cameras throughout the asylum, and braced herself for a night of unimaginable terror. The night stretched into an eternity of dread. Emily witnessed apparitions, their translucent forms gliding through the corridors, their faces contorted in silent screams. She heard disembodied voices, whispering her name, pleading for release. Icy drafts brushed against her skin, leaving a lingering chill that seemed to penetrate her soul. By dawn, as the first rays of sunlight struggled to pierce the oppressive gloom, Emily staggered out of the asylum, her mind reeling from the horrors she had witnessed. The recordings and video footage she carried were filled with irrefutable evidence of the paranormal. Back home, she meticulously analyzed the data, searching for rational explanations, but found none. She shared her findings online, and the world took notice. Many, disillusioned with skepticism, embraced her evidence, sharing their own encounters with the unexplained. Emily became a reluctant celebrity, a voice for those who had witnessed the impossible. She wrote books, gave lectures, but her quest for answers remained insatiable. She continued her investigations, driven by a need to understand the darkness she had encountered, knowing that Echo Asylum was just one piece of a much larger, terrifying puzzle.